The next thing that I'm going to talk about is collecting the water sample. And it's really important that when you collect the water sample that you get a good clean sample. You want to make sure that it doesn't have any contaminants. And we also want to make sure that the samples are consistent. There's some programs that tell people to collect their samples by leaning over a dock and collecting right directly from the water. We advocate to have our volunteers collect all their samples by using one bucket. And the idea is that they'll collect a bucket of water, and then all of the tests that they process will come from this one bucket. It's sort of a snapshot of what the water conditions are like at that time. If you can think of collecting a sample from a river, if you collect one sample at a river, the river's typically got some flow to it and the water moves. So collecting your first sample and then you set that aside, you go to collect your second sample, well, you're actually collecting a completely different set of water. The water has moved past because the water flows downriver. So again, by using a bucket, you can collect sort of a snapshot of the conditions of the water at the time. All of our buckets have a rope on them, and they have a handle so that if you have to lower your bucket down over a dock or a bridge or something at a distance, you can lower it by this rope. The other option is that it actually helps you keep track of it. If you put it in the water and somehow it gets away from you, you can reel it back in. When we're going to collect the sample, again, if we're doing it for the first time, these buckets tend to get dirty. They will sit around for a couple weeks at a time and they'll collect dirt and dust. This one has a little bit of leftover salt in the bucket from a previous sample. So we require that before any tests are done, that we would rinse all of our equipment 3 times with the seawater that we're going to sample from. So, for instance, if I want to collect a sample with this bucket, I'm going to want to rinse this 3 times from the water that I'm going to be collecting. So typically, if I were standing at a dock, I would want to stand at one end of the dock, preferably the downstream end of the dock, and dip the bucket in the water, scoop it up, give it a little bit of a swirl. Again, toss the water downstream. We'll do that 3 times. Swirl it around and toss it. And then when I'm going to collect my sample, I'm going to want to go upstream on the dock. So I would go up away from where I've been agitating the water by splashing it with the bucket. The best thing to do is to try and get one quick scoop of water. One other thing about the buckets that you might have noticed is there are holes in the side. And the reason for the holes, there's a couple reasons for that. One is it assures that when volunteers collect their sample of water that they're going to collect it at least up to the holes so that everybody has the same volume of water that they're processing when they're doing their tests. If I were to fill this bucket with water only to this height, and I'm collecting a sample in late August when it's hot out, the tendency for that small amount of water to heat up quickly is great. It's something that will happen very quickly. If I have this much, which is close to 4 gallons of water, it's going to take a lot longer for that water, that volume of water to heat up. So it's, again, some quality assurance in our program. It's a way that we can make sure that when our volunteers are doing their testing that the temperature doesn't change that fast to them. The other reason for the holes in it is to be able to rinse your equipment. Now I have another bucket over here that's already full, and if I were to fill some bottles, I can pour water out the side and kind of rinse my equipment off in such a way that it minimizes the amount of times that I actually have to put my hands in the water. If I were doing testing again in late August when it's really warm, a lot of people tend to put on sun cream or some kind of sun lotion. And while you may think you can get it off by washing your hands, you may not be able to. And so if you put your hands back in the bucket, you have a tendency to contaminate the sample. So again, by having these holes, you can pour it out the side and rinse things, and it minimizes the amount of times you contaminate them. The first thing we're going to want to do is do a temperature reading, and we use these pH meters for recording temperature and pH. Now this has been calibrated back at home, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the on-off button, we'll turn it on, and we'll set it in the bucket. One thing that we're going to do that makes it a little bit easier to set this and have it be a little bit more stable is we're going to use some clothespins to hold up this wire bail to the bucket. And if you put one on either side, that kind of keeps that steady. And we'll let that sit for about 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. Really, 5 minutes is a good time. It takes a little while for it to equilibrate for the temperature and pH. After about 8 minutes, it'll shut itself off. So just keep an eye on it.